There are songs that do not just describe a feeling, they crystallize it. They take something moving around inside you for years, unnamed and unexamined, and put it into words so precise that once you hear them, you cannot unname what they named. Adele has a song like this on her album 30. It is called I Drink Wine. And in the middle of it, between confessions about disappointment and the slow exhaustion of trying to live up to other people's images of who you should be, she names something almost no one in popular music has ever named, that she hopes, one day, she will learn to get over herself. It is a strange thing to admit in a song. Pop music almost never says this. The standard confession is that you have been wronged, hurt, misunderstood, that the world has been unfair. Adele's confession runs in the opposite direction. The problem is not just what happened to her, it is what she has done with what happened. The replaying, the wallowing, the slow erosion of an identity into a story of suffering. The song asks a question that takes courage to even hear. What would it mean, actually, to get over yourself? The Stoics asked this question 2,000 years before Adele put it into a song. They saw the gravity of self-pity with unusual clarity, why it has such pull, why people who know better still fall into it, why even the wisest minds in history had to fight it daily. They understood something modern self-help refuses to admit, that drowning in your own pain is one of the most comfortable places a human being can choose to live. And the price of that comfort is everything else. What follows is 7 truths drawn from that understanding, 7 mechanisms for breaking the grip of self-pity, and 7 reasons drowning in yourself is the most expensive habit you may ever own. The 7th is the one almost no one is willing to face, and it is the one everything else rests on. Welcome to Logostoic. What you are about to hear is not a motivational speech about positive thinking. It is an examination of one of the most universal patterns in human psychology, the slow, comfortable, self-feeding habit of drowning in your own pain, and what the Stoics, who faced wars, exile, plagues, and the deaths of people they loved, discovered about how to actually get out of it. This is for the person who has been carrying a wound longer than the wound was worth carrying, who has caught themselves performing their suffering, who suspects, quietly, that the pain has become an identity they do not know how to put down. If that is you, like this video, subscribe to Logostoic, and stay for all 7 truths. Each one builds on the one before. If you are ready to stop drowning, prove it. Comment now, I stopped drowning. Now let's begin. Truth 1. Self-pity is the most expensive comfort you will ever buy. Start here, because everything else in this video depends on understanding the mechanism, and the mechanism is almost never named honestly. Self-pity is comfortable. That is the part the wellness industry will not tell you. It is the part that makes self-pity so difficult to escape. People do not stay in patterns that bring them no reward. They stay in patterns that pay them something, even if the payment is small, hidden, and ultimately ruinous. So what does self-pity actually pay? 3 things. The first is sympathy. The world contains an enormous amount of compassion, and the role of the wounded is one of the most efficient ways to access it. When you cast yourself as a victim, others rush in with their hearts open, listening, validating, offering comfort. The role is socially rewarded in a way that almost no other role is. The second payment is the suspension of responsibility. If you are a victim, then nothing is your fault. The job did not work out, circumstances. The relationship ended, they did it. The dream slipped away, life is unfair. As long as you are the victim, you are released from the burden of having to act, to change, to become. The third payment, and this is the one almost no one names, is a sense of solidarity. To be the wounded one is to feel, briefly, that the world is with you, that the universe has paused just for a moment to acknowledge what you're going through. The role offers a particular kind of communion that very few other roles can offer. But here's the catch, and Stoics like Epictetus, who had spent his early years as a slave, understood this catch with brutal clarity. Every comfort has a price, and the price of the victim role is non-negotiable. You have to suffer to keep it. The moment you stop suffering, the role evaporates. The sympathy stops. The exemption from responsibility ends. The communion fades. To keep the rewards of the role, you have to maintain the wound. and the wound maintained becomes the entire architecture of a life. This is what the Stoics called a trap dressed as comfort. You think you are being held by something gentle. You are actually being held by something that requires your pain as fuel. And the only way out is to be willing to give up the rewards, sympathy, exemption, communion, and step into a less comfortable place. The place where you are no longer a victim, where you're responsible again, where you have to act. That place is harder, but it is the only place where freedom lives. You have been paying for the comfort of the victim role with the only currency you actually have, your one life. Stop renting the role. Comment below, the comfort is the prison. Truth 2, your suffering does not make you special. It makes you human. There is a particular distortion that self-pity produces, and it is worth naming because once you see it, you can catch it in real time. The distortion is this: when you are drowning in your own pain, your pain feels unique, singular, unmatched. The mind generates the conviction that what you are going through is something no one else has ever quite gone through, that your loss is deeper, your circumstances harder, your wound more profound than anyone could understand. This conviction feels true. It is almost always false. There is a passage in Marcus Aurelius's journal that returns again and again to this exact correction. He reminds himself that whatever has happened to him, betrayal, loss, frustration with the people around him, has happened to countless human beings before him, will happen to countless after him, and is happening in some form to people right now. The reminder is not cold. It is grounding. It pulls him out of the private cell where his own particular pain wants to keep him. Marcus had a word for what corrects this distortion. He called it sympathia, the recognition that all human beings are connected by the same fundamental architecture of experience. Everyone you have ever met has lost someone. Everyone has been betrayed. Everyone has carried a hope that did not work out. The specific shape of your loss is unique to you. The fact of loss is universal, and the moment you remember this, something shifts, not in the pain itself, but in your relationship to it. You are no longer alone in a private hell. You are walking the same road every human who ever lived has walked, in their own way, with their own particular weight. This is not minimization. The Stoics never said your pain was small or that you should be grateful for it. They said it was shared, that every person you pass on the street is, in some quiet way, carrying something just as heavy as what you are carrying. And the recognition that you are not alone in suffering removes one of self-pity's most powerful illusions. The illusion that what is happening to you is so special that the normal rules of human resilience do not apply. There is something almost paradoxical about this insight. The recognition that you are not special does not diminish you. It connects you. It places you back in the human family rather than in the isolated tower where self-pity builds its little kingdom. And from that connected place, the suffering becomes bearable in a way it never was when you were carrying it alone, as if it were yours and yours only. Drowning is something you do alone. Surviving is something humans have always done together. You have been treating your wound as if no one in human history has ever carried one like it. They have. Drop the isolation. Type below, I am not alone in this. Truth 3, pain is the event. Drowning is the story you build on it. This is the cleanest distinction the Stoics ever made about suffering, and it is the distinction that almost no one in modern life is taught to draw. Pain and drowning are not the same thing. They are not even in the same category. Pain is what happens to you. Drowning is what you do with what happened, the replaying, the elaborating, the construction of a narrative in which the original event becomes a permanent statement about who you are and what your life means. Epictetus, who taught his students this distinction more than any other, used to say it like this: men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things. The event itself is finite. It happens, and then it is over. The opinion about the event, the story your mind builds on it, is potentially infinite. It can be replayed for years. It can be elaborated indefinitely. It can grow until it is larger than the original event was. And the suffering you feel 10 years after the original pain is almost never coming from the event itself. It is coming from the story you have been telling yourself about the event every day in the privacy of your own head. Consider what this means in practice. The painful thing happened. That part is closed. It cannot be changed. But what happens next, the meaning you assign to it, the conclusions you draw from it about your worth or your future, the role it plays in your sense of who you are, all of that is still open. All of that is happening right now, in the construction your mind is performing. And construction, unlike events, can be examined, can be questioned, can with practice be set down. This distinction is also the foundation of what the Stoics called the discipline of assent, the practice of catching, in real time, the moment when your mind moves from observing what happened to constructing a story about what it means. The event arrives, the story tries to attach itself, and the Stoic discipline is the moment of pause where you ask, is this addition true or is it just familiar? Most of what we believe about our own suffering, when examined honestly, turns out to be familiar rather than true. We have been telling ourselves the same story for so long that the story feels self-evident. It is not. It was constructed. And what was constructed can be deconstructed. There is an everyday image that makes this concrete. Imagine someone hands you a stone. That is the event. Solid, real, finite. Now imagine that you spend the next 10 years carrying the stone in your pocket, taking it out to look at it every hour, polishing it, building shelves to display it, structuring your day around tending it. The stone is the event, the carrying is the drowning. And the carrying, not the stone, is what becomes too heavy. You did not get the stone wrong. You got the carrying wrong. And the Stoic discipline is, in its simplest form, the recognition that you are allowed to put the stone down whenever you decide to. The pain happened. The drowning is happening still. And it is happening because you have not stopped telling yourself the story. Drop the story. Comment below, I feel the pain. I dropped the story. Truth 4. There is a right way and a wrong way to share pain. The Stoics were not cold. This is the most persistent and most damaging misconception about Stoic philosophy, that it teaches you to suppress your pain, hide your suffering, refuse to share what you are going through. It teaches none of these things. What it teaches, with unusual precision, is the difference between 3 different ways of dealing with pain, 2 of which destroy you, and 1 of which actually helps. The first way is broadcasting. This is what self-pity becomes when it has an audience. You take your wound to anyone who will listen, coworkers, acquaintances, strangers on the internet, and you tell the story of your suffering again and again and again. The telling does not heal anything. It rehearses the wound. It makes the wound a public identity, and the people who receive it learn eventually to keep their distance, not because they do not care, but because the broadcasting has no end, no purpose, no exit. The second way is the opposite extreme, what modern psychology calls toxic positivity. This is the pretense that everything is fine, that the pain does not exist, that any acknowledgement of difficulty is somehow a moral failure. The person who buries their pain this way pays in a different currency. The wound, unspoken, does not heal. It festers underneath, distorting decisions, leaking out sideways into the wrong relationships, building pressure that eventually breaks something. Toxic positivity is broadcasting's mirror image, and both fail for the same reason. Neither is honest engagement with what is actually true. The third way is what the Stoics actually recommended, and it is what almost no one in modern life learns to do. You share your pain with the right people, at the right time, in the right way. Not with everyone, not with no one. With 1 or 2 trusted people who can meet you with both compassion and clarity, who can sit with the pain without being destroyed by it, and who can also gently refuse to let you drown in it. The conversation between 2 people who are standing above their problems is a different kind of conversation than the conversation between 2 people drowning. The first heals. The second deepens the spiral. There is a modern wrinkle to this that the Stoics could never have anticipated, and it is worth naming. Social media has built an enormous infrastructure for the first kind of sharing, the broadcasting kind. The algorithm rewards the most performative version of your pain. The more dramatic the wound, the more engagement it generates. And in this environment, it becomes very easy to mistake the validation of strangers for the healing that only honest witnesses can provide. The validation feels like support. It is actually anesthetic. It numbs the pain just enough to keep you posting, but it never moves the pain through you. The wound performed for the algorithm stays exactly where it was, only now it is part of your public identity, which makes it even harder to put down. Find the right witnesses. Not many. The ones who love you enough to listen, and who also love you enough to refuse to validate the role of the wounded as your permanent identity. Those are the people through whom real grief becomes real growth. The rest, including the algorithm that rewards your most performative pain, is the broadcasting that will keep you stuck. You have been telling everyone, and so telling no one. You have been hiding from yourself, and so healing from nothing. Find the right witness. Type below, I share with the right ones. Truth 5. Drowning is a phase, not a destination. Here is something almost no one tells you about pain, and it is something the Stoics understood with the clarity of people who had lived through the worst the ancient world could deliver. Drowning at some point is going to happen. It will happen to you. It has happened to everyone. The expectation that a wise or disciplined or psychologically healthy person should never drown, should never get pulled under by their own suffering, is not Stoic. It is fantasy. The Stoics knew that when life lands a real blow, the human mind temporarily loses its footing. The waves do come over. The drowning is real. What separates a person who recovers from a person who does not is not whether they ever drowned. It is what they did with the drowning when it happened, and how much they learned from it about getting out faster the next time. Pain, the Stoics believed, is a gift if you are willing to study it. The first time you drown, you may stay under for months. The second time, the same wave catches you and you recognize it. You have been here before. You know which way the surface is. You know what helped last time. The third time, you barely break the surface before you are oriented again. The pain has not changed. You have. This is what it actually means to grow from suffering. Not that you stop suffering, but that you stop being shipwrecked by it. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal about the same fears returning, the same losses recurring, the same patterns of mind that had to be corrected again this morning after he had supposedly corrected them yesterday. He was not a man who had finished the work. He was a man who had stopped expecting it to be finished. And in that acceptance, that drowning would come again, and that he would have to swim again, he found a kind of durability that the people expecting permanent peace never find. There is something liberating about this truth if you let yourself feel it. You do not have to never drown. You only have to learn from it. The pain that pulls you under this month is also a teacher whose lesson will be available the next time the same kind of wave arrives. And the wave will arrive. That is not pessimism. It is the structure of being alive. What you can change is not the waves. What you can change is how much you learn each time you are knocked down, and how much faster each time you stand back up. The Stoics did not promise a life without storms. They promised something more honest and more useful, that you could become the kind of person for whom storms are no longer catastrophes. They remain difficult. They no longer remain destroying. You have been treating your drowning as evidence of failure. It is evidence of being human. Get up and learn what the wave came to teach. Comment below. I am in a phase. Truth 6. Stand above the problem, not inside it. The Stoics taught that there are two places you can stand in relation to any difficulty, and that the difference between them is the entire difference between freedom and being trapped. You can stand inside the problem, drowning in it, surrounded by it, identified with it, or you can stand above the problem, looking at it, examining it, deciding what to do about it. The two positions feel similar from the inside. They produce completely different lives. Standing above the problem is not denial. It is not pretending the problem does not exist. It is the precise discipline of refusing to let the problem be the only thing in your field of vision. You acknowledge it. Yes, this happened. You feel it. Yes, this hurts. And then you ask the only question that can ever produce movement. What is my next right action? The Stoic insight is that the place above the problem contains things the place inside the problem never contains. Solutions, self-respect, the capacity to see clearly. The place inside the problem contains only the problem, growing larger the longer you stay there. There's a concrete behavioral test that distinguishes these two positions, and it is sharper than any abstract teaching. When you think about your difficulty, do you think in solutions or in symptoms? When you talk about your difficulty, do you talk about what you might do, or do you replay what was done to you? When you ask others for help, do you ask for problem solving, or do you ask for permission to keep drowning? The position you are standing in shows up in the structure of your thinking, your questions, and your speech. It is observable in real time, and it can be changed in real time the moment you notice. This does not mean you suppress the feeling. The feeling is the feeling. What changes is what comes after the feeling. The person standing inside the problem feels the pain and then constructs the story of how unfair it is. The person standing above the problem feels the pain and then asks what the pain is telling them about the next move. Same event, same emotion, completely different outcome, because the position from which the emotion was met was structurally different, and the position is the only variable that was ever under your control. There is a Roman example that captures this position with unusual force. Cato the Younger lived through the slow collapse of the republic he had given his entire life to defend. He watched the institutions he loved be dismantled around him. He had every conceivable reason to drown, to retreat into despair, to write bitter letters about how unfair history had been to him, to become the dignified victim of Caesar's rise. He did none of these. He kept showing up. He kept arguing in the Senate. He kept acting as if his principles still mattered, even when the political ground beneath those principles was disappearing. He was not pretending the situation was fine. He saw it clearly. He simply refused to let the clarity become an excuse for collapse. That is what standing above the problem looks like under maximum pressure. Marcus Aurelius commanded an empire while burying multiple children. He did not avoid the grief. He met it from above, feeling it fully, and then turning back to the work that was still his to do. The grief and the action were not in conflict. They lived together in a person who had refused to let either consume the other. That is what standing above the problem looks like, not coldness. Sovereignty. You have been inside the problem so long, the inside has started to feel like home. It is not your home. Step up. Type below, I stand above the problem. Truth 7. You are not your wound. Trust the roots beneath. Beneath. This is the deepest of the 7 truths, and it is the one almost no one is willing to face. Because to face it is to admit something terrifying, that for some period of your life, perhaps a long period, you have been confusing yourself with what happened to you. You have been carrying your wound the way a person carries a passport, as proof of identity, as evidence of who you are, as the central document of your life. And when someone suggests that the wound is not actually you, the suggestion lands like a threat. Because if you are not the wound, then who are you? The Stoic answer is precise. You are not the event that happened to you. You are not the story your mind has been building on top of it. You are not even the suffering you are experiencing right now. You are something older, deeper, and more durable than any of these. The part of you that is still standing while the wound is still bleeding. The part that is reading these words while the pain is still real. The part that has survived everything you have ever survived and is still here, somehow still capable of one more day. There is an image from ordinary life that captures this, and it may be the most useful image in this entire video. Imagine a tree in a storm. The wind is real, the rain is real, branches break, leaves are stripped away. From the outside, the tree looks devastated, and in a sense it is. But the roots are still there, the trunk is still there. The deep, quiet structure that the storm cannot reach is still there. And when the storm passes, and it always passes, the tree does not need to be rebuilt from nothing. It only needs time, and the leaves grow back, and the branches regenerate, and what looked like the end of the tree turns out to have been a season the tree was always equipped to survive. This is what trust in yourself actually means in the Stoic understanding. Not a vague self-confidence, not a positive affirmation, not a belief that nothing will ever knock you down. The trust is in the roots, the part of you that the storm cannot reach. You have those roots. You would not have survived this far without them. And the wound, however large it looks from where you are standing now, is happening to the leaves and the branches. It is not happening to the roots. The roots are still there, holding, doing the work the visible parts of you cannot see. That is who you actually are. The drowning ends, in the end, not because you defeated it, but because you finally remembered that the deeper part of you was never the one drowning. The one drowning was the version of you that had confused itself with the wound. The deeper version, the one with the roots, was waiting for you to come back. And the entire purpose of the work in this video, every truth before this one, is to help you remember the way home. The storm did not destroy you. The leaves and the branches took the hit. The roots are still there. Come back to them. Write in the comments, "I am not my wound." 7 truths. Self-pity is the most expensive comfort. Your suffering does not make you special, it makes you human. Pain is the event, drowning is the story. There is a right way and a wrong way to share pain. Drowning is a phase, not a destination. Stand above the problem, not inside it. And you are not your wound, the roots beneath are still there holding. Adele's song ends, more or less, where this video ends. With the quiet hope that one day she will learn to get over herself, that she will stop being the protagonist of an endless tragedy, that she will pick up her life, not because the pain is gone, but because the drowning in the pain has finally lost its appeal. The Stoics would have recognized that hope completely. They would have told her, and they tell you now, across 2,000 years, that the day she actually gets over herself is the day she stops mistaking the wound for the tree, the leaves for the roots, the storm for who she is. The drowning is not the end of you. The drowning is a season. The roots are still there, holding, even when every visible part of you has been stripped down to bone. And when the storm passes, the tree comes back. It always comes back. Not because the storm was small, but because the roots were always larger than the storm. The only thing the work in this video can do, the only thing any work can do, is help you remember that this is who you are. Stop drowning in self-pity. Not because the pain is small, not because you should be ashamed of feeling it, because there is a deeper part of you, the part with the roots, that has been waiting for you to come back, and the drowning has been keeping you away from it. That is the whole of today's video. The work is to come home. If this video reached the part of you that has been quietly drowning, the part that has been carrying a wound longer than the wound was worth carrying, consider liking it. There are people right now at 3 in the morning who are exactly where you have been. They will only find this perspective if those who recognize themselves in it carry it to them. Every like is a real act of putting this in front of one of them. And leave a comment. Of these 7 truths, write down the one you have been violating most, the one whose absence has been keeping you under the longest. Naming it is the first real step out. The comments below are full of people doing the same work. Add yours, honestly, and the next person reading will know they are not alone in the water. Subscribe to Logostoic, because the work of climbing out of self-pity and learning to stand above your difficulties rather than inside them is not the work of one video. It is the work of returning again and again to the practices that build a mind that does not drown easily. That is what this channel is built for. If that is the kind of strength you actually want, you have found the right place. May you remember the roots beneath the storm, the tree beneath the broken branches, and the deeper part of you that the wound was never large enough to reach.